Chapter 1. The Shattered Vows. The rain pounded against the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Cathedral, like 1,000 accusing fingers, mirroring the storm raging inside Elara Voss's chest. She stood at the altar in her ivory lace gown, the one she'd spent months agonizing over, her hands trembling as she clutched the bouquet of white roses. The scent of them was cloying, almost suffocating, under the weight of 200 pairs of eyes fixed on her. Friends, family, distant relatives, they all blurred into a sea of expectant faces, whispering behind gloved hands. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the organ's fading notes. Her fiancé, Groom, she corrected herself bitterly, stood opposite her, his tuxedo impeccably tailored, his blonde hair slicked back with that effortless charm that had once made her heart flutter. But now, his blue eyes were cold, distant, like shards of ice reflecting a decision already made. The priest cleared his throat, his kindly face creased with concern. "Lucas Harrington, do you take Elara Voss to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Silence stretched like a taut wire. Elara's pulse thundered in her ears. This couldn't be happening. Not after 3 years of building a life together, of shared dreams and whispered promises under starlit skies. Lucas had been her anchor after her parents' death in that freak car accident 5 years ago, the one that left her with scars not just on her skin, but etched into her soul. He'd pulled her from the wreckage of grief, or so she'd thought. I can't," Lucas said finally, his voice steady but laced with regret. Gasps rippled through the congregation like a wave crashing against rocks. Elara's bouquet slipped from her fingers, petals scattering across the marble floor. "What?" she breathed, stepping forward, her veil tangling in the sudden movement. "Lucas, what are you saying?" He met her gaze, but there was no warmth there, only pity. "I'm sorry, Elara. I thought I could do this, but I don't love you. Not like that. Not enough to spend forever." The words hit her like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to outright exclamations. Her best friend Mia stood up in the front row, her hand over her mouth in shock. Elara's aunt, the only family she had left, shook her head in disbelief. And Lucas's mother, that stern woman with the pearl necklace, looked almost relieved. Humiliation burned through Elara, hot and unrelenting. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her throat closed up. Instead, she turned, her heels clicking sharply as she fled down the aisle. The doors loomed ahead, heavy oak barriers to the outside world. She burst through them into the downpour, the rain soaking her dress instantly, turning the delicate fabric heavy and clinging. "Elara, wait!" Mia's voice called from behind, but Elara didn't stop. She ran blindly, her vision blurred by tears and rain, until she reached the parking lot. Her car was blocked in by guests' vehicles, a cruel joke of logistics. Thunder rumbled overhead, and lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the chaos of her life in stark white flashes. That's when she heard it, the low growl of an engine cutting through the storm. A sleek black Harley Davidson roared into the lot, its rider clad in leather that gleamed wetly under the streetlights. He pulled up beside her, killing the engine with a flick of his wrist. The man swung off the bike, his broad shoulders straining against the jacket, dark hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes, piercing green, like emeralds caught in the light, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her freeze. "You look like you could use a getaway," he said, his voice deep and gravelly, carrying over the rain like a command. Elara blinked, water streaming down her face. Who are you?" "Name's Thorne Blackwood," he replied, extending a gloved hand. "And right now, I'm the guy offering you an escape from whatever hell just happened in there." She hesitated, glancing back at the cathedral doors where silhouettes gathered, watching. Lucas would be there soon, with his apologies and excuses, the pitying stares, the gossip that would follow her for months. Something wild and reckless stirred in her chest, a spark of defiance against the life that had just crumbled. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. Thorne's lips quirked in a half-smile, but his eyes held shadows, secrets lurking in their depths. "Because I've been where you are, trapped in a moment that changes everything. Take my hand, Elara. Let's ride out of here." How did he know her name? The question flickered in her mind, but the rain drowned it out. Before she could overthink it, she placed her hand in his. It was warm, strong, calloused in a way that spoke of hard work, not the polished boardrooms Lucas inhabited. Thorne helped her onto the bike, her sodden dress hiking up awkwardly, but she didn't care. He climbed on in front, his body a solid wall against the wind. "Hold on tight," he warned, and she wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the heat radiating from him even through the leather. The engine roared to life, vibrating through her bones, and they peeled out of the lot just as the doors burst open, spilling guests into the rain. The city blurred around them, neon lights streaking like comets, horns blaring as Thorne wove through traffic. Elara buried her face against his back, the scent of leather and something wild, like pine and earth, filling her senses. For the first time that day, she felt alive, not broken. But as the adrenaline faded, questions crept in. Who was this stranger? And why did his touch send a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold? They rode for what felt like hours, leaving the urban sprawl behind for winding country roads flanked by dense forests. The rain eased to a drizzle, and Thorne finally pulled off onto a gravel path leading to a secluded cabin nestled among towering pines. He cut the engine, the sudden silence deafening. "End of the line for now," he said, helping her dismount. Her legs wobbled, but he steadied her with a gentle grip. Up close, he was even more imposing. Tall, muscular, with a jaw shadowed by stubble and a scar tracing his left eyebrow. Yet there was a vulnerability in his gaze, a flicker of pain that mirrored her own. "Why did you help me?" Elara asked, her voice steadier now. Thorne shrugged, unlocking the cabin door. "Let's just say I hate seeing good people get hurt. Come in, dry off. I've got clothes that might fit, my sister's, from when she visits." Inside, the cabin was rustic but warm, with a stone fireplace crackling to life under Thorne's quick hands. He handed her a towel and a set of jeans and a sweater, disappearing into another room to give her privacy. As she changed, peeling off the ruined dress, Elara caught her reflection in a mirror. Pale skin, dark circles under her hazel eyes, auburn hair matted and wild. She looked like a ghost of the woman who'd woken up that morning full of hope. When she emerged, Thorne had brewed coffee, the aroma grounding her. They sat by the fire, the flames dancing shadows across his face. "Tell me about it," he prompted softly. "If you want." The words tumbled out then, the engagement, the plans, Lucas's betrayal. Thorne listened without interruption, his expression unreadable, but his eyes softening. "Sounds like he didn't deserve you," he said finally. "Some people are cowards when it matters most. And you? What do you do, Thorne Blackwood? Ride around rescuing jilted brides?" He chuckled, a low rumble that sent warmth through her. "I'm in investments, family business. But I prefer the open road. Clears the head." There was more to him, she sensed it. The way he glanced at the window during thunderclaps, as if expecting something. Or how his muscles tensed, like a predator on alert. But exhaustion pulled at her, and she didn't press. "You can stay here tonight," he offered. "Guest room's yours. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps." As she lay in the soft bed later, listening to the wind howl through the trees, Elara wondered if fate had intervened. Little did she know, the man downstairs harbored secrets darker than the night. Secrets of fangs and fur, of a pack that called him Alpha, and a bond that had drawn him to her wedding like a moth to flame. For Thorne Blackwood wasn't just a billionaire on a Harley. He was a werewolf, and Elara Voss was his fated mate, whether she knew it or not. Chapter 2. Whispers in the woods. Elara woke to the scent of pine and fresh coffee. Sunlight filtering through the cabin's curtains in golden shafts that danced across the wooden floors. Her body ached from the emotional whirlwind of the previous day, but the bed had been surprisingly comfortable, wrapped in quilts that smelled faintly of lavender. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and glanced at the clock on the nightstand, nearly noon. How had she slept so long? The events of the wedding crashed back over her like a wave. Lucas's rejection, the rain-soaked escape, and Thorne Blackwood, the enigmatic stranger who'd swept her away on his Harley. She dressed in the borrowed clothes, a soft flannel shirt and jeans that fit better than expected. and padded barefoot into the main room. Thorne was there, standing by the kitchen counter, his back to her as he poured steaming liquid into 2 mugs. He moved with a fluid grace, his broad frame filling the space without effort. The scar on his eyebrow caught the light, and she wondered again about its story. "Morning," he said, without turning, his voice a low rumble that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. How had he known she was there? She hadn't made a sound. "Good morning," she replied, her tone cautious. "Or afternoon, I guess. Thank you for everything." He turned then, handing her a mug with a nod. His green eyes met hers, intense and searching, as if he could see straight through to her fractured heart. "No thanks needed. Cream and sugar's on the table if you want." Elara took the coffee, wrapping her hands around it for warmth. They sat at the small wooden table by the window, overlooking the dense forest that stretched endlessly beyond. Birds chirped in the branches, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, but there was an undercurrent of wildness here, something untamed that made the hairs on her arms stand up. "So," she began, stirring her coffee absently, "you said you're in investments. Family business. What does that entail exactly? Riding around on a motorcycle doesn't scream boardroom to me." Thorne leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. It softened the rugged lines of his face, making him look almost approachable. "It's a bit unconventional. My family's got holdings in timber, real estate, stuff tied to the land. I handle the field work, scouting properties, negotiating deals. The bike, that's for when I need to clear my head. Nothing like the wind to chase away the demons." "Demons?" Elara echoed, her curiosity piqued. She sipped her coffee, strong and black, just how she liked it. How did he know that too? He shrugged, his gaze drifting to the window. "Everyone's got 'em. Past mistakes, losses that stick with you. What about you? Before the wedding fiasco, what filled your days?" Elara hesitated, the question stirring up memories she'd rather bury. But there was something about Thorne, his quiet strength, the way he listened without judgment, that made her want to open up, just a little. "I work as a graphic designer. Freelance mostly. It lets me be creative, escape into colors and shapes when the real world gets too heavy. After my parents died, it was a way to cope. Lucas was part of that world too, stable, predictable. Or so I thought." Thorne's expression darkened for a split second, a flicker of anger that he quickly masked. Sounds like he was a fool. Stability's overrated if it's built on lies. They fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire he'd stoked earlier. Elara studied him covertly, noting the way his hands, strong, veined, with faint scars across the knuckles, cradled his mug. He seemed at home here, in this remote cabin, far from the city's chaos. But why? And how had he ended up at her wedding of all places? "You knew my name yesterday," she said suddenly, the question bursting out. "Before I told you how." Thorne paused, his mug halfway to his lips. For a moment, tension coiled in his shoulders, like a spring ready to snap. Then he set the cup down, meeting her eyes steadily. "Overheard it in the parking lot. People were calling for you. Elara, it's unique. Stuck with me." It was plausible, but something in his tone felt off, like a half-truth dangling in the air. She nodded, letting it go for now. But suspicion lingered, a quiet hum in the back of her mind. After breakfast, simple eggs and toast he whipped up with surprising skill, they stepped outside. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and evergreens. Thorne led her on a short walk through the woods, pointing out trails he'd hiked as a kid. "This land's been in my family for generations," he explained, his voice reverent. "It's got a way of healing you, if you let it." Elara followed, her sneakers crunching over fallen leaves. The forest felt alive, watchful, with shafts of light piercing the canopy like spotlights. As they walked, their conversation flowed easier, shared laughs over quirky client stories from her design work, his tales of negotiating with stubborn landowners. She learned he had a sister, Lila, who lived in the city but visited often, and that he'd lost his parents young too, in a hunting accident he didn't elaborate on. The parallel tugged at her, forging a tentative bridge between them, but odd moments punctuated the ease. Once, a rustle in the underbrush made Thorne freeze, his head tilting as if listening to a distant call. His eyes narrowed, scanning the trees with an intensity that bordered on predatory. "Just a deer," he muttered. But Elara swore she saw a flash of something golden in his irises, like a trick of the light. Another time, as they paused by a stream, he bent to pick up a smooth stone, his sleeve riding up to reveal a tattoo on his forearm, an intricate wolf's head encircled by runes. "What's that mean?" she asked, reaching out instinctively to trace it. Thorne pulled back slightly, his skin warm under her fingers. "Family crest, old tradition." His touch lingered on hers for a beat too long, sending a spark through her veins. She withdrew her hand, cheeks flushing, but the connection hummed between them, unspoken and electric. It was ridiculous. She'd just been jilted at the altar, and here she was, feeling drawn to a man she barely knew. Yet there was a pull, like gravity, making her lean in despite herself. By late afternoon, they returned to the cabin. Thorne built a fire in the outdoor pit, and they sat on logs, roasting marshmallows as the sun dipped low. The flames cast flickering shadows, and Elara found herself sharing more, her fears of being alone. The betrayal that cut deeper than Lucas's words, the scar on her shoulder from the accident that had taken her parents. "It's like I'm marked," she whispered, staring into the fire. "Cursed to lose everyone." Thorne's jaw tightened, and he reached over, his hand covering hers. "You're not cursed, Elara. Sometimes loss clears the path for something better, stronger." His words wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing the raw edges of her pain. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not pitied. But as night fell, the full moon rising fat and silver over the trees, Thorne grew restless. He paced the porch, his movements agitated, glancing at the woods with a hunger that unsettled her. "You okay?" she asked, joining him. "Yeah," he said too quickly. "Just the moon. It stirs things up." "What things?" He turned to her, his eyes gleaming in the moonlight, almost luminescent. "Memories, regrets, nothing you need to worry about." But worry she did, as she lay in bed that night, hearing him slip out into the darkness. A distant howl echoed through the trees, primal and haunting, raising goosebumps on her skin. What secrets was Thorne hiding, and why did her heart ache at the thought of him out there, alone in the wild? Little did she know. Thorne wrestled with his own turmoil under the moon's gaze, his wolf straining against the chains of control. She was his mate, the one fate had chosen, but revealing that could shatter her fragile world. For now, he had to protect her, from the pack's rivals lurking in the shadows, and from the beast within himself. Chapter 3. Shadows of the moon, the next morning dawned with a crisp clarity that belied the restlessness of the night before. Elara stirred in the guest room, the howls from the forest echoing in her dreams like a siren's call. She shook off the unease, attributing it to the unfamiliar surroundings, and made her way downstairs. Thorne was already up, chopping wood outside the cabin with rhythmic precision. Each swing of the axe revealed the corded muscles in his arms, his shirt damp with sweat despite the cool air. He moved like a force of nature, powerful and controlled, but there was a tension in his posture, as if he were expending energy to keep something at bay. She watched him from the window for a moment, a strange flutter in her chest. It wasn't just attraction, though she couldn't deny the pull of his rugged features and the way his presence filled the space around him. It was something deeper, a sense of safety mingled with mystery that both comforted and intrigued her. Pushing open the door, she stepped onto the porch, the chill nipping at her skin. "Morning workout?" she called, her voice lighter than she felt. Thorne paused, embedding the axe in the stump with a thud. He wiped his brow, turning to her with that half-smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Something like that. Helps me think. Sleep okay?" "Mostly," she admitted, hugging her arms against the breeze. "Those howls last night, wolves, right? Sounded close." His expression flickered, a shadow crossing his face before he masked it with nonchalance. "Yeah, the woods are full of them. Harmless, mostly. They stick to their territory." Elara nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. The howls had sounded almost mournful, laced with a human-like longing that sent chills down her spine. She joined him by the woodpile, picking up a smaller log to stack it neatly. You seem to know a lot about this place. How long has your family owned it? Centuries, he replied, his tone casual but his eyes distant, as if peering into the past. Passed down through generations. It's more than land. It's a legacy. Responsibilities come with it. Responsibilities. She tilted her head, stacking another log. Working side by side felt natural, their movements sinking without effort. Thorne hesitated, then set down the axe and faced her fully. Protecting what's ours. Keeping balance. Not everyone understands that. His words carried weight, hinting at burdens unspoken. Elara felt a pang of empathy. She knew about legacies tainted by loss. I get it. After my parents. I inherited their house, but it felt like a cage of memories. Sold it to start fresh. But starting fresh isn't easy when the past clings to you. He reached out, his hand brushing hers as he took the log from her. The contact was brief, but it ignited a warmth that spread through her veins, making her breath catch. Sometimes the past shapes us for what's ahead, he said softly. Makes us stronger for the fights we didn't choose. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just them. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the unspoken connection humming like a live wire. Elara broke away first, her cheeks warming. What was she doing? She'd known him for barely a day, yet sharing these fragments of her soul felt right, as if he'd been waiting to hear them. They spent the morning exploring more of the property. Thorne led her to a hidden clearing where a small lake mirrored the sky, its surface dotted with lily pads. They sat on a fallen log, skipping stones across the water. Conversation meandered from light topics. Favorite books. He loved old folklore tales. She preferred contemporary novels, to deeper waters. Tell me about your sister, Elara prompted, watching a ripple spread from her stone. Lila? She's fierce, independent. Runs the city side of the business. We're close, but she worries about me out here alone. Thorne's voice softened, a rare vulnerability peeking through. After our parents died, we leaned on each other. But I've always been the one to handle the wilder aspects. Wilder? She echoed, curiosity sharpening. He skipped a stone perfectly, watching it bounce 5 times. The unpredictable parts. Nature doesn't follow rules. Neither do some people. Again, that evasion, like he was skirting the edge of a confession. Elara pressed gently. You keep mentioning family traditions. The tattoo, it's part of that? Thorne's hand instinctively went to his forearm, rubbing it through his sleeve. Yeah, symbol of loyalty, protection. My ancestors believed in bonds that go beyond blood, soul-deep connections. The way he said it sent a shiver through her, as if the words were meant for her ears alone. She thought of Lucas, how their relationship had been surface level, built on convenience rather than destiny. With Thorne, every glance, every touch, felt charged with inevitability. As the sun climbed higher, they returned to the cabin for lunch, fresh sandwiches he assembled with herbs from a small garden. Over the meal, Elara's phone buzzed incessantly, messages from Mia and others piling up. She ignored them at first, but Thorne noticed. Friends checking in? He asked, pouring her more water. Yeah, Mia's probably frantic. I should call her, let her know I'm okay. He nodded, but his jaw tightened subtly. Take your time. Signal's spotty, but the porch works best. Stepping outside, Elara dialed Mia, who answered on the first ring. Elara, oh my God, where are you? Everyone's worried sick after you rode off with that stranger. I'm fine, Elara assured her, glancing back at the cabin. His name's Thorne. He's helping me sort things out. Mia's voice dropped to a whisper. Thorne Blackwood? The billionaire recluse? Girl, do you know who he is? His family's loaded, but there are rumors. Weird stuff about their estates, disappearances in the woods. Be careful. Rumors? Elara's heart skipped. Like what? Just stay safe. Call me if you need anything. Hanging up, Elara felt a seed of doubt take root. Who was Thorne, really? The kindness, the connection? It couldn't all be coincidence. She re-entered the cabin, finding him staring out the window, his posture alert. Everything good? He asked, turning with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, she lied, forcing a grin. But as they cleared the table, she caught him wincing, clutching his side briefly before straightening. You hurt? She asked, concern overriding suspicion. Old injury, he muttered. Flares up sometimes. Nothing serious. Let me see. Without thinking, she stepped closer, her hand hovering near his shirt. Thorne froze, his breath hitching, but he didn't pull away. Gently, she lifted the hem, revealing a jagged scar across his ribs, faded but deep, like claw marks. How did this happen? She whispered, her fingers tracing the edge lightly. Thorne's hand covered hers, holding it there. His skin was feverishly warm, his gaze intense. A fight, protecting someone I cared about. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken emotions. Elara's pulse raced, the air thick with tension. She could feel his heartbeat under her palm, strong and steady, mirroring her own erratic rhythm. Slowly, he released her hand, but the connection lingered, a promise of more to come. That afternoon, they hiked a steeper trail, the path winding through thicker underbrush. Thorne moved ahead, clearing branches with ease, but he paused often, his head cocking as if listening to whispers in the wind. At one point, a low growl echoed from the trees, not an animal, but something guttural, almost challenging. What was that? Elara asked, grabbing his arm. Thorne's body went rigid, his eyes scanning the shadows. Stay close, he murmured, his voice low and commanding. He positioned himself between her and the sound, protective instinct radiating from him. The growl faded, but the incident left Elara unsettled. Back at the cabin, as evening fell, she confronted him gently over dinner, venison stew he'd prepared, rich and savory. You act like you're always on guard, she said. Like something's out there, watching. Thorne set down his fork, his green eyes meeting hers with a depth that made her breath catch. The woods have eyes, Elara. Old stories, old threats. But you're safe here, with me. His words wrapped around her heart, deepening the bond forming between them. She wanted to believe him, to lean into this unexpected haven. But as night deepened and the moon rose again, fuller and brighter, Thorne's restlessness returned. He excused himself early, claiming a headache, but she heard the door creak open later, his footsteps fading into the forest. Curiosity warred with fear as she peered out the window, catching a glimpse of him disappearing into the trees, his form silhouetted against the moonlight. What was he hiding? And why did her soul ache to follow, as if tethered by an invisible thread? Unbeknownst to her, Thorne fought the pull of the moon, his wolf howling internally for release. The rival pack's scouts were circling closer, drawn by the scent of his mate. He couldn't reveal his world yet, not until he knew she could handle the truth. But with each shared moment, the bond strengthened, making the secret harder to keep. Chapter 4. Echoes of the past Elara couldn't shake the image of Thorne vanishing into the moonlit forest the night before. She rose early, the cabin's quiet amplifying her thoughts, and found him already outside, tending to a small herb garden tucked against the cabin's side. The morning mist clung to the trees like a veil, softening the edges of the world. But it did little to ease the knot of curiosity twisting in her gut. He knelt in the dirt, his hands, those strong, scarred hands, gently pressing soil around young sprouts. There was a tenderness in the act that contrasted with his imposing build, making him seem almost human in his vulnerability. Almost. Morning, she said, approaching with a mug of coffee she'd brewed as a peace offering. You were out late last night. Thorne glanced up, his green eyes guarded but warm. He accepted the mug, his fingers brushing hers in a way that sent a familiar spark through her. Couldn't sleep. The woods call to me sometimes. Clears the mind. She sat on a nearby stump watching him work. You talk about the woods like they're alive. Like they have a voice. He paused, wiping his hands on his jeans. They do if you listen. Secrets in the wind, stories in the roots. My family taught me that. Elara nodded, but her mind raced. Mia's warnings echoed. Rumors of disappearances. The Blackwood family's eccentric reputation. Yet here, in the daylight, Thorne seemed genuine, his presence a balm to her frayed nerves. Tell me more about your family, she prompted, craving pieces of his puzzle. Thorne stood, dusting off his knees, and gestured for her to follow him inside. They settled in the living room, the fire from last night reduced to glowing embers. He pulled an old photo album from a shelf, its leather cover worn and cracked. "This was my parents," he said, opening to a faded picture of a couple standing before the cabin. A young boy, Thorne, she realized, with wild dark hair clinging to his father's leg. A girl, Lila, beamed beside them. "They look happy," Elara murmured, tracing the image. The father's eyes mirrored Thorne's, piercing, almost otherworldly. "They were," he replied, his voice low. "Until the accident. Hunting gone wrong. I was 12. Lila was 10. It changed everything. The parallel to her own loss hit her like a gust of wind. She placed her hand on his arm, feeling the tension there. "I'm sorry. I know that pain. Losing them suddenly. Wondering if you could have done something." Thorne's gaze met hers, raw emotion flickering in his depths. "You blame yourself?" "Every day," she admitted, her voice cracking. "The car crash. I was supposed to be with them, but I stayed homesick. Survivor's guilt, they call it." He covered her hand with his touch grounding. "It's not your fault, Elara. Fate has its own plans, cruel as they seem." The word fate hung between them, heavy with implication. She searched his face, seeing shadows of grief that matched her own. In that moment, the barriers between them thinned, their shared wounds forging a bridge. Thorne squeezed her hand gently before pulling away, as if afraid to linger too long. To lighten the mood, he suggested a drive into the nearby town for supplies. The Harley rumbled beneath them as they wound down rural roads, the wind whipping her hair. Elara held on tight, her body pressed against his back, the heat of him seeping through her clothes. It felt intimate, this shared motion, like they were sinking in ways words couldn't capture. The town was quaint, a cluster of shops and a diner nestled among rolling hills. They stocked up on groceries, Thorne insisting on fresh ingredients for dinner. At a small bookstore, he browsed folklore sections while she picked up a novel. "You like myths?" she asked, eyeing his selection, a book on ancient wolf legends. "Family interest," he said with a shrug. "Stories passed down. Some say they're more than tales." His cryptic response stirred her suspicion again. Why wolves? The tattoo, the howls, the scar, it all pointed to something hidden. But as they lunched at the diner, sharing fries and stories, the doubt faded under the warmth of his laugh. He told her about childhood adventures in the woods, getting lost and finding his way by the stars. She shared her design passion, how colors healed her when words failed. "You're talented," he said, genuine admiration in his tone. "Escaping into art, it's brave." No one had called her brave before. Lucas had dismissed her work as a hobby. The compliment warmed her, deepening the pull she felt toward him. Back at the cabin, they cooked together, Thorne chopping vegetables with expert precision, Elara stirring a sauce that filled the air with savory aromas. Music played softly from an old radio, and they moved around each other in easy harmony, shoulders brushing, glances lingering. During a quiet moment, as the stew simmered, Thorne turned to her, his expression serious. "Elara, about yesterday, the growl in the woods. It's nothing to worry about, but stay inside at night, okay? For me." His concern wrapped around her like a protective cloak, but it also heightened the mystery. "Why, what's out there?" He hesitated, his jaw clenching. "Wild animals. Poachers sometimes. I don't want you getting hurt." She stepped closer, her hand on his chest, feeling his heart race. "And you? You go out there alone." "I can handle it," he murmured, his voice rough. His hand rose to cup her cheek, thumb tracing her skin softly. The touch was electric, sending heat pooling in her core. Time slowed, their breaths mingling, inches apart. Elara's pulse thundered, drawn to him like a moth to flame. But Thorne pulled back abruptly, his eyes flashing with that strange golden hue again. "I need some air," he said, stepping outside. Elara watched him go, confusion swirling. What had stopped him? The rejection stung, echoing Lucas's betrayal. But this felt different, self-imposed, like he was protecting her from himself. As dusk fell, she busied herself with a book by the fire, but her mind wandered. Later, dinner was subdued, the earlier tension unresolved. They talked of lighter things, dreams for the future, her desire to travel, his love for the solitude of the woods. Yet underneath, the bond deepened, threaded with unspoken truths. That night, sleep evaded her. A storm brewed outside, thunder rumbling like distant growls. She heard Thorne pacing downstairs, then the door opening. Peering from her window, she saw him strip off his shirt in the rain, his scarred torso glistening. He tilted his head back as if communing with the sky, before dashing into the trees. Heart pounding, Elara grabbed a flashlight and followed, the rain soaking her instantly. The forest was alive with sounds, branches snapping, leaves whispering. She caught glimpses of movement, shadows darting. Then a pained groan ahead. "Thorne?" she called, pushing through underbrush. He emerged from the gloom, shirtless and drenched, his eyes wild. "Elara, go back." But she froze, spotting fresh scratches on his arms, like he'd been fighting. "What happened?" "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he growled, but his voice was strained, almost animalistic. She reached for him, undeterred. "Let me help." Thorne grabbed her wrist, gentle but firm, his skin burning hot. "You don't understand." "I can't, not yet." Their faces close, rain streaming down, the air crackled with intensity. Elara saw the conflict in his eyes, desire warring with restraint. "Then tell me," she whispered. "Trust me." He released her, stepping back with a shudder. "Soon, but for now, please, go inside." Reluctantly, she obeyed. But as she lay in bed, the howls returned, closer, more insistent. One sounded like Thorne's voice, twisted in agony. What secret tormented him? And why did her heart insist on drawing closer, despite the danger? In the shadows, Thorne shifted partially, claws digging into earth as he fought the change. Her presence soothed and ignited his wolf, the mate bond pulsing stronger. But rivals scented her now, closing in. He had to reveal the truth soon, or risk losing her forever. Paturi, Chapter 5, Veiled Desires. The storm's aftermath left the forest glistening, droplets clinging to leaves like unshed tears. Elara woke with a start, her dreams fragmented by images of Thorne's scarred form in the rain, his eyes glowing with that unnatural light. She dressed quickly, the borrowed clothes now feeling like a second skin, and descended the stairs to find the cabin empty. A note on the table read, "Out for firewood. Back soon," to relief mixed with frustration. He'd slipped away again, avoiding the confrontation from last night. She brewed coffee, the routine grounding her, but her mind replayed the moment. His hot skin, the growl in his voice, the way he'd pushed her away. What was he fighting? And why did it feel like her presence intensified his struggle? When Thorne returned, arms laden with logs, he offered a tentative smile. Water dripped from his hair and fresh mud caked his boots. "Morning. Sleep through the thunder?" "Barely," she replied, handing him a towel. "You were out in that mess last night." "Those scratches, did you see a doctor?" He dried his face, avoiding her gaze. "They're superficial. Heal quick." Elara crossed her arms, not buying it. They looked fresh, like animal claws. Thorne stacked the wood by the fireplace, his movements deliberate. Branches, probably. Storm was rough. Lies, or at least omissions, hung in the air. But pressing him felt like prodding a wound, so she let it drop, for now. Instead, she suggested a quiet day in, the weather still drizzly. They spent the morning by the fire, Thorne teaching her an old card game his family played. Laughter came easier, punctuating the silences, as they bet with pine cones from the mantel. "You're a natural," he said after she won a round, his eyes sparkling with genuine amusement. It was a rare glimpse of lightness in him, free from shadows. "Beginner's luck," she teased, but the compliment warmed her. As they played, conversation deepened. Thorne shared more about Lila, how she'd pursued a city career to escape the isolation of their heritage, but always returned for holidays. "She's the glue," he admitted. "Reminds me there's life beyond these trees." Elara leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And you? Why stay out here? With your family's wealth, you could live anywhere." He shuffled the cards, his fingers deft. "The land calls to me. It's in my blood. Leaving would feel like abandoning part of myself." His words resonated, echoing her own reluctance to let go of the past. "I envy that connection. After the accident, I drifted. Lucas was supposed to be my anchor, but..." Thorne set the cards down, his hand reaching across to hers. He wasn't worthy. You deserve someone who sees your strength, Elara. The fire in you. The intensity in his voice made her pulse quicken. His thumb traced circles on her skin, a soothing rhythm that belied the storm in his eyes. She didn't pull away this time, letting the contact linger, building like embers to flame. And you see that? From the moment I saw you in that rain, he murmured. Soaked, broken, but unbowed. The air thickened, charged with unspoken longing. Elara's breath shallowed, her gaze dropping to his lips. But a distant rumble of thunder broke the spell, and Thorne withdrew, clearing his throat. Lunch? She nodded, masking her disappointment. They prepared a simple meal, grilled cheese with tomatoes from the garden, eating on the porch as the drizzle tapered off. The forest seemed to watch them, birds flitting closer than usual, as if drawn to their energy. Afterward, Thorne suggested checking a nearby trail for storm damage. The path was muddy, forcing them to walk single file at times, but he often turned to offer a hand over puddles or roots. Each touch deepened the bond, a silent promise accumulating like layers of trust. At an overlook, they paused, the view sweeping over valleys cloaked in mist. Beautiful, Elara breathed. Thorne stood beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. It is, but beauty can hide dangers. These woods, they're not always what they seem. Suspicion flared again. Like what? More branches? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. There are old feuds, rivals who want what my family has. I patrol to keep things safe. Patrol? She turned to him, searching his face. Like a guardian? Something like that. His scar caught the light, and she reached up, tracing it gently with her fingertip. How did you really get this? Thorne caught her hand, holding it to his cheek. His skin was warm, almost feverish. A fight. Years ago. Defending my territory. Territory? The word evoked images of animals marking boundaries, not humans. He released her, stepping back with a forced chuckle. Family land. Semantics. But his eyes held that golden flicker again, brief but undeniable. Elara's heart raced, not from fear but from the puzzle he presented. He was kind, protective, yet cloaked in mystery. The pull toward him grew stronger, like an invisible tether tightening with each revelation. As they hiked back, a sudden rustle in the bushes made Thorne stiffen. He pushed her behind him, his body a shield. Stay quiet. A deer burst out, bounding away, but Thorne remained tense, scanning the trees. False alarm, he said, but his voice was tight. You act like we're being hunted, Elara whispered. Not you, he replied cryptically. But caution's wise. Back at the cabin, the incident lingered. Over afternoon coffee, she probed gently. Those rivals, you think they're out there? Thorne nodded, staring into his mug. They challenge boundaries. It's been escalating. Why not call the police? His laugh was bitter. Some things are handled. Internally. Family ways. The evasion frustrated her, but it also humanized him, showing cracks in his armor. She shared her own vulnerabilities, confessing how Lucas's betrayal had shattered her self-worth. I feel foolish for believing in forever. Thorne set his mug down, moving to sit beside her on the couch. You're not foolish. You're hopeful. That's rare. His arm draped around her shoulders, a comforting weight. Elara leaned into him, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong, rhythmic, almost too powerful. They stayed like that, the fire crackling, as rain pattered anew. Thorne's fingers stroked her hair, the gesture intimate yet chaste. You've brought light here, Elara. I didn't realize how dark it was. Her heart swelled, the bond solidifying in quiet moments like this. But as evening deepened, his restlessness returned. He excused himself to check the perimeter, disappearing into the twilight. Curiosity won over caution. Elara waited a beat, then followed stealthily, flashlight dimmed. The woods swallowed sounds, but she caught his trail, broken twigs, footprints. Deeper in, she heard voices. Hiding behind a tree, she peered out. Thorne stood in a clearing, facing two men, tall, muscular, with eyes that gleamed unnaturally. She's not part of this, Ronan, Thorne growled, his stance aggressive. The one called Ronan sneered. Your mate? The pack senses her. Weakens you. Hand her over or we take the territory. Mate? The word chilled her. Thorne's response was a snarl, inhuman and feral. Touch her, and I'll rip you apart. The men lunged, but Thorne moved blindingly fast, tackling one. Fur rippled. Wait, fur? Elara blinked, heart pounding. It must be a trick of the light. She backed away, snapping a twig, all heads turned. Thorne's eyes met hers, wide with horror. Elara, run! She fled, mind reeling. What had she seen? What was Thorne? The suspense clawed at her, but the bond pulled her back, whispering that answers lay ahead, dangerous as they were. Unseen, Thorne dispatched the intruders, his wolf barely contained. The secret teetered on revelation, threatening to unravel everything, or bind them forever. I turned Chapter 6. Fractured trust Elara's lungs burned as she crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping at her face and arms like vengeful spirits. Rain-slicked leaves slipped under her feet, threatening to send her sprawling, but fear propelled her forward. Thorne's voice echoed in her mind. Run! Mingled with the snarls and thuds of the fight she'd glimpsed. What were those men? And Thorne? The way he'd moved, faster than humanly possible, with that ripple across his skin that looked like, no, it couldn't be. Her mind rejected the impossible, focusing instead on the cabin's distant glow, piercing the darkness. She burst through the tree line, slamming the door behind her and bolting it with trembling hands. Panting, she leaned against the wood, her soaked clothes clinging coldly. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap, too isolated, too full of secrets. What had she overheard? Mate. The word twisted in her gut, evoking possession, destiny, something primal she didn't understand. And those eyes, the intruder's gleams, Thorne's flash of gold. It wasn't right. Footsteps approached outside, heavy and deliberate. Elara grabbed a poker from the fireplace, holding it like a weapon. Stay back, she shouted, her voice steadier than she felt. It's me, Thorne called, low and urgent. Elara, open the door, please. She hesitated, heart hammering. Part of her wanted to barricade herself in, call Mia, escape this madness. But another part, the one that had leaned into his touch, shared her scars, urged trust. Slowly, she unbolted the door, stepping back with the poker raised. Thorne entered, drenched and disheveled, fresh cuts on his arms oozing blood that mixed with rain. His shirt was torn, revealing more of those claw-like scars across his torso. He raised his hands in surrender, his green eyes pleading. I'm not going to hurt you, ever. What the hell was that? She demanded, her grip tightening. Those men, Ronan? Talking about territory and mate, and you moved like an animal. What are you involved in, Thorne? He closed the door gently, his posture slumping with exhaustion. Water pooled at his feet as he ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated. Those were rivals from an old feud. They want what my family has, the land, the power. I dealt with them. Dealt with? Elara's voice rose. I saw fur, Thorne. Or something. Am I crazy? His face paled, but he shook his head. The storm, the shadows, it plays tricks. You saw a fight, that's all. I trained for this. Self-defense. They're dangerous people. Lies again, or half-truths. She lowered the poker slightly, but suspicion lingered. Why me? You show up at my wedding, know my name, bring me here. Is this some game? Am I bait? Thorne stepped closer, his expression cracking with pain. No, God, no. I was in town on business, heard the commotion. Saw you running, broken. It hit me, reminded me of my own losses. I couldn't leave you there. She searched his eyes, seeing sincerity amid the evasion. The bond between them tugged, insistent, urging her to believe. But fear warred with it. Then why the secrets? The nightly disappearances? The howls? He sighed, sinking into a chair by the fire. Blood trickled from a gash on his forearm, and without thinking, Elara set down the poker and fetched the first aid kit from the bathroom. Kneeling beside him, she cleaned the wound, her hands steady despite the turmoil inside. Thorne watched her, his gaze softening. The howls are wolves, real ones. This area has packs, protected but wild. I go out to monitor them, part of the family duty. She bandaged the cut, her fingers lingering on his skin. It was hot, feverish as always. And the mate thing? They said I'm your mate. He winced, not from pain but the question. Overheard wrong. They meant a match for their games, trying to provoke me. It didn't ring true, but his vulnerability disarmed her. Up close, she saw the weariness etched in his features, the weight he carried alone. "You're hurt because of me," she whispered. "They mentioned sensing me." Thorne's hand covered hers on the bandage, his touch electric. "I'd fight 100 of them to keep you safe. From the moment I took your hand, I knew you matter, more than you should this soon." The confession hung between them, raw and real. Elara's breath caught, the air thickening with unspoken desire. She leaned in, her free hand cupping his jaw, feeling the stubble rough under her palm. "Why does it feel like I've known you forever?" "Because some connections defy time," he murmured, his eyes darkening. His thumb brushed her lip, sending shivers down her spine. The moment stretched, magnetic. Elara closed the distance, her lips meeting his in a tentative kiss. It was soft at first, exploratory, but ignited like dry tinder. Thorne responded with restrained hunger, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her onto his lap. The kiss deepened, tasting of rain and need, years of loneliness melting away. She felt his heartbeat thunder against hers, wild and powerful, as if echoing the storm outside. But as passion built, Thorne tensed, breaking away with a gasp. His eyes flashed that golden hue again, and he gently set her back on her feet. "We can't—" "Not yet. Why?" Elara asked, frustration and hurt mingling. "What's holding you back?" He stood, pacing to the window, his back to her. "There's things about me, complications. I don't want to drag you into my world until you're ready." "Your world?" She approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. Muscles rippled under her touch, taut with restraint. "Thorne, whatever it is, we can face it. Together." He turned, pulling her into a hug, his chin resting on her head. "You have no idea how much I want that. But trust me a little longer, please." The plea in his voice cracked her resolve. She nodded against his chest, inhaling his scent. Pine, earth, something untamed. The bond strengthened in that embrace, woven from shared vulnerability and budding love. But suspense simmered, the secret looming like the full moon cresting the trees. They spent the rest of the night by the fire, talking in hushed tones. Thorne shared more fragments, how the family business involved ancient pacts, protecting the land from exploitation. Elara opened up about her dreams deferred, the art she'd set aside for Lucas's practical world. Laughter returned tentatively, bridging the gap, but the earlier kiss lingered, a promise unfulfilled. As dawn broke, Thorne cooked breakfast, his movements careful, as if afraid to break the fragile peace. They ate on the porch, the forest awakening around them. Birds sang, but Elara sensed eyes watching, perhaps wildlife, perhaps more. "Tell me one truth," she said suddenly. "Something real." Thorne met her gaze, his expression solemn. "The pull I feel toward you, it's like nothing I've known. Fate, maybe, and it terrifies me, because losing you would destroy me." His words wrapped around her heart, deepening their connection. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Then don't push me away." He squeezed back, but his eyes darted to the woods where a shadow moved, brief, but there. "I won't, but danger's close. Stay near me today." As they cleared the table, a low growl echoed from the trees, closer than before. Thorne stiffened, his protective stance returning. "Inside. Now." Elara obeyed, but glanced back, seeing a large wolf silhouette at the forest's edge, eyes gleaming. Was it watching them? Her pulse raced, the mystery coiling tighter. What lurked in Thorne's world, and how long could he hide it before it consumed them both? Meanwhile, Thorne's wolf howled internally, the mate bond demanding claim. Ronan's pack circled, hungry for weakness. The unveiling approached, inevitable as the moon's cycle. Years Chapter 7. Bonds in the storm. The growl lingered in Elara's ears long after the wolf silhouette vanished into the misty dawn. She stood frozen on the porch, Thorne's hand still gripping hers tightly, his body a tense barrier between her and the forest. The air hummed with unspoken threats, the trees whispering secrets she couldn't decipher. Thorne's eyes scanned the tree line, his jaw set in a hard line, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to unleash. "Was that one of your protected wolves?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The creature had been massive, its eyes reflecting an intelligence that unnerved her. Thorne released her hand slowly, his touch lingering as if reluctant to let go. "Something like that. They're bolder in bad weather. Come on, let's get inside." He ushered her back into the cabin, locking the door with a decisive click. The warmth of the fire contrasted sharply with the chill seeping into her bones. Not from the cold, but from the growing realization that Thorne's world was far more dangerous than he'd admitted. Yet amid the fear, a strange comfort bloomed. His protectiveness wrapped around her like armor, making her feel cherished in a way Lucas never had. They busied themselves with mundane tasks, Thorne stoking the fire, Elara preparing tea to dispel the tension. But as they sat on the couch, mugs steaming in their hands, the silence stretched, heavy with the weight of last night's kiss and the morning's omen. "That kiss," Elara began, setting her mug down. "It wasn't nothing, Thorne. Don't pretend it was." He met her gaze, his green eyes stormy. "It wasn't, but it's complicated. My life, it's not simple. I don't want to pull you into chaos." She shifted closer, her knee brushing his. "I'm already in it. Since you took my hand at the wedding, tell me why it feels like fate shoved us together." Thorne's hand found hers again, intertwining their fingers. His skin was warm, almost too warm, as if a fire burned within him. "Maybe it did. I've spent years alone guarding this place, my secrets. Then I see you. Strong, beautiful, hurting, and something inside me awakened." The vulnerability in his voice cracked her defenses. Elara leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder. "Awakened? Like what?" He hesitated, his thumb stroking her palm in rhythmic circles. "A part of me that's been dormant, hungry for connection, but it's dangerous. If you knew everything..." "Then share a piece," she urged softly. "Let me in," Thorne sighed, pulling her closer. His arm encircled her waist, and she melted into him, the steady thrum of his heartbeat against her ear. "After my parents died, I inherited more than land. Responsibilities that isolate me, feuds that go back generations. Those men last night, Ronan and his group, they're part of a rival faction. They see weakness in attachments. Attachments like me?" Elara lifted her head, searching his face. The scar on his eyebrow seemed more pronounced in the firelight, a badge of battles fought. He nodded, his free hand cupping her cheek. "You're not weakness. You're strength. But they sense it, my pull toward you. It makes me vulnerable." The confession deepened the intimacy between them, like threads weaving tighter. Elara's heart ached for him, this lone guardian burdened by legacy. She traced the line of his jaw, feeling the stubble rasp under her fingers. "I've been vulnerable my whole life. After the accident, I built walls. Lucas cracked them only to shatter me. But with you, they crumble willingly." Thorne's eyes darkened with emotion, and he bent his head, capturing her lips in a kiss that was slower, more deliberate than the night before. It started tender, a brush of warmth, but built like a gathering storm, his hands sliding to her back, pulling her flush against him. Elara responded, her fingers threading through his hair, tasting the desperation in his touch. Heat bloomed between them, a slow burn that promised more, but he held back, his restraint evident in the tremor of his muscles. When they parted, breathless, Thorne rested his forehead against hers. "You undo me, Elara." "Then let me," she whispered, her voice husky. But even as desire swirled, suspense gnawed. The way his body temperature spiked during the kiss. The faint growl she swore vibrated in his chest. They spent the afternoon in quiet companionship, the rain pattering a soothing rhythm on the roof. Thorne showed her an old family journal, its pages yellowed with age, filled with sketches of wolves and runes similar to his tattoo. "Ancestral lore," he explained, his finger tracing a symbol. "Bonds of blood and soul." Elara studied the drawings, a chill prickling her skin. The wolves looked almost human in their expressions. "Your family revered them?" "Worshipped in a way," he said evasively. "Believed in harmony with nature's beasts." As evening fell, they cooked dinner together, pasta with herbs from the garden, the domesticity fostering closeness. Over the meal, Thorne opened up about his isolation, how the cabin was both refuge and prison. "I envy your freedom, your art, creating beauty from nothing." Elara smiled, but her eyes held curiosity. "And your scars? More from these feuds?" He nodded, rolling up his sleeve to reveal the fresh cuts from last night, now faded to pink lines, healing unnaturally fast. "I recover quickly." "Good genes." She reached out, tracing one, feeling the smooth skin. "That's impossible. These were deep yesterday." Thorne pulled his sleeve down, his smile strained. "Family trait. Nothing more." The lie hung there, but she didn't press, sensing his walls. Instead, she shared her own art, sketching a quick portrait of him on a napkin. Strong lines, shadowed eyes. "See, you're more than secrets." He stared at the drawing, touched. "No one's captured me like that." As night deepened, the storm returned with fury, wind howling like beasts at the door. Thorne grew restless, pacing, his senses on alert. Elara watched from the couch, wrapped in a blanket. "You hear something?" "Just the wind," he muttered, but his eyes gleamed gold in the lamplight. A crash outside. Branches? Or something heavier, made them both jump. Thorne grabbed a flashlight, heading for the door. "Stay here." "No," Elara insisted, following. "Together, remember?" He relented, and they stepped into the gale. The beam cut through rain, revealing uprooted trees and paw prints, massive and fresh, circling the cabin. Thorne's face hardened. "They've been here. Who?" Elara demanded, fear sharpening her tone. "The rivals, testing boundaries." Back inside, he barred the windows, his movements efficient, almost predatory. Elara's pulse raced, but his presence steadied her. They sat vigil by the fire, his arm around her, sharing stories to pass the time, childhood mischief, lost loves. The bond solidified in the shared watch, trust building like a fortress. But as midnight neared, Thorne winced, clutching his side. "Old pain," he growled, but sweat beaded his brow, his skin flushing. "Let me help," Elara said, guiding him to the bedroom. She helped him lie down, fetching water. As she returned, he was shirtless, his body racked with shivers, muscles rippling as if fighting an internal war. "Thorne, what's happening?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Full moon soon," he rasped, eyes squeezing shut. "It stirs things." The words sent a jolt through her. "Moon, like the legends in the journal?" Suspense coiled tighter, hints accumulating, fast healing growls, wolf prints. "What if—" He pulled her down beside him, holding her close. "Stay with me. Your touch calms it," Elara complied, curling against him, her hand on his chest. His heartbeat thundered, wild, but slowed under her caress. In that vulnerable moment their bond deepened, intimacy beyond physical, souls touching in the dark. Yet outside, shadows moved, eyes watching. Ronan's pack closed in, drawn by the mate's scent. Thorne sensed them, his wolf raging. But for now, he clung to control, to her. The secret teetered, ready to shatter the fragile peace. Chapter 8. The pull of the moon. Elara lay beside Thorne in the dim bedroom, the storm's fury rattling the windows like an insistent intruder. His body radiated heat, feverish waves that made the sheets cling damply to their skin. She stroked his chest in slow, soothing circles, feeling the erratic rise and fall of his breaths, steady under her touch. The full moon hung outside like a watchful eye, its silver light filtering through cracks in the curtains, casting ethereal glows across the room. Thorne's eyes were closed, but tension etched his features. Brow furrowed, lips pressed thin, as if waging an internal battle. "You're burning up," she whispered, concern lacing her voice. She pressed a cool cloth to his forehead, fetched from the basin she'd prepared earlier. "This isn't normal, Thorne. We should get you to a doctor." He shook his head weakly, his hand capturing hers and holding it against his heart. "No doctors, it passes. Always does." His voice was rough, gravelly, with an undercurrent that sounded almost like a growl suppressed. Elara searched his face, the golden flecks in his eyes catching the moonlight when he cracked them open. There was something primal there, a depth that both drew her in and set her on edge. The moon. You mentioned it stirs things. What things? Tell me the truth. Thorne's grip tightened, his fingers intertwining with hers in a way that felt desperate, anchoring. Old wounds, cycles I can't escape. But you, being here makes it bearable. Your scent, your voice, it's like a lifeline. Scent? The word struck her as odd, animalistic. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the vulnerability he revealed. No one had ever needed her like this. Not Lucas with his polished detachment. Not anyone. It stirred something protective in her, a fierce urge to shield him as he'd shielded her. She shifted closer, her body aligning with his, offering silent comfort. Then hold on to me. Whatever this is, we'll face it. He turned his head, his breath warm against her hair. You have no idea what you're offering. My world, it's shadowed. Dangerous. Then light it for me, she murmured, her free hand tracing the scars on his torso, those faded claw marks that told stories he wouldn't share. His skin twitched under her fingers, muscles rippling as if alive with their own will. A low moan escaped him, not entirely pain, laced with something deeper, hungrier. The intimacy of the moment wrapped around them, thickening the air. Elara's heart raced, the bond between them pulsing like a living thing. She'd come here broken, fleeing humiliation, but in Thorne's arms she felt whole, desired in a way that transcended words. He pulled her on top of him gently, his hands framing her face as he kissed her. Slow, deep, pouring unspoken emotions into the contact. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of restraint fraying at the edges. She responded with equal fervor, her fingers digging into his shoulders, grounding him as much as herself. When they broke apart, Thorne's eyes held a wild gleam, his chest heaving. Elara, I don't deserve this. You. She silenced him with another kiss, lighter this time, then rested her forehead against his. Stop deciding for me. I've spent too long letting others define my worth. With you I feel chosen. His arms tightened around her, a possessive hold that sent warmth pooling in her core. You are. More than you know. They lay like that for hours, the storm raging outside mirroring the turmoil within him. Thorne shared fragments of his past in hushed tones, nights spent wandering the woods after his parents' death, seeking solace in the wild. The weight of leading his family operations, isolated from normal life. Elara reciprocated, confessing her deepest fears. The emptiness after the accident, the betrayal that made her question love. But here, with you, it's like the pieces fit. Like fate intervened that day. Thorne's chuckle was strained, but genuine. Fate's a tricky beast, pulls strings we can't see. Beast. Another word that echoed oddly, tying into the growls, the prints, the lore in his journal. Suspense simmered in her mind. What if his family traits were more than genetics? What if the wolves weren't just animals? But the questions faded under the warmth of his embrace, trust building like layers of a nest. As the night wore on, Thorne's fever peaked, his body shuddering with waves of pain. He gripped the sheets, knuckles white, a guttural sound escaping his throat. Elara held him through it, whispering reassurances, her presence a balm. Breathe with me, she coached, matching his inhales. Gradually, the tremors eased, his temperature dropping to a manageable warmth. Thank you, he rasped, pulling her close again. No one's ever stayed. I'll always stay, she promised, the words slipping out unbidden but true. The bond sealed in that vow, emotional threads knotting tighter, weaving love from shared trials. Dawn crept in, the storm abating to a drizzle. Thorne slept fitfully beside her, his face relaxed in repose. Elara slipped out of bed quietly, brewing coffee and reflecting on the night. The connection felt cosmic, inevitable, but shadows lingered. The unnatural healing, the moon's influence, the rivals who spoke of sensing her. She glanced at the journal on the shelf, tempted to delve deeper, but loyalty stayed her hand. Thorne stirred as she returned with mugs, his eyes opening to find hers. Morning, he said, voice husky from the ordeal. She handed him the coffee, sitting on the bed's edge. You look better, feel it? Thanks to you. He sat up, wincing slightly, and pulled her into a gentle hug. Last night, it meant everything. Over breakfast, simple oatmeal with berries from the woods, they planned a light day, recovering from the storm's chaos. Thorne suggested a short walk to clear debris, his strength returning remarkably fast. As they stepped outside, the air crisp and renewed, Elara noticed more paw prints encircling the cabin, deeper than before. "They're persistent," Thorne muttered, kicking dirt over one. "Who? The rivals?" She watched his reaction closely. He nodded, but his eyes avoided hers. "They won't stop until they claim what's mine." "Including me?" The question hung heavy. Thorne turned, cupping her face. "Especially you, but I won't let them near." The protectiveness in his tone deepened her affection, but also heightened the mystery. What made her so vital? As they cleared branches, working in tandem, their conversation flowed, dreams of a life beyond feuds, perhaps traveling together. Laughter punctuated the labor, bonds strengthening in shared effort. But mid-afternoon, a howl pierced the quiet, not distant, but close, challenging. Thorne froze, his body going rigid. "Inside! Now!" Elara complied, but from the window she saw him confront the tree line, his stance aggressive. A large wolf emerged, flanked by two others, their eyes locked on Thorne. He growled back, inhuman, feral, and the wolves retreated, but not before one snapped its jaws, a warning. Heart pounding, Elara met him at the door. That wasn't normal. Wolves don't act like that. Thorne's face was pale, conflicted. They're trained, part of the feud. Lies, she sensed, but the truth hovered, tantalizingly close. As evening fell, tension mounted, the full moon's peak approaching. Thorne's restlessness returned, but now with her by his side, the secret strained against its confines, threatening to burst. Little did she know, tonight would force the unveiling, as Ronan's pack launched their assault, drawn by the mate bond's irresistible call. Elara, Chapter 9. Whispers of the Beast. The full moon crested the horizon like a swollen pearl, its light piercing the cabin's windows and bathing the room in an otherworldly glow. Elara paced the living room, her nerves frayed from the howls that had echoed intermittently through the afternoon. Thorne had grown increasingly agitated as the day waned, his movements sharp and restless, like a caged animal sensing an approaching predator. He'd insisted on fortifying the cabin, boarding windows, checking locks, but his explanations remained vague, laced with that familiar evasion. "Sit with me," he said now, his voice a low rumble from the couch. He extended a hand, his green eyes pleading beneath the strain etched on his face. The fever from last night lingered faintly, making his skin warm to the touch as she took his hand and settled beside him. Elara squeezed his fingers, feeling the calluses that spoke of hard labor, or perhaps harder fights. "Those wolves outside, they're not normal, Thorne. The way they circled, watched. It's like they know you." He pulled her closer, his arm draping over her shoulders in a protective embrace. The gesture was intimate, grounding, and she leaned into him, inhaling his scent, earth and pine, with an undercurrent of something wilder, almost metallic, like blood under the moon. "They do, in a way," he admitted, his breath warm against her temple. "Part of the old feuds. Animals can sense tension, loyalties. Loyalties." The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Elara tilted her head to meet his gaze, seeing the conflict swirling in his eyes, that golden flicker appearing more frequently now, as if the moon coaxed it forth. "And me? Do they sense me too? Ronan called me your mate. What does that mean?" Thorne's jaw tightened, his free hand clenching into a fist on his knee. For a moment, silence stretched, broken only by the wind moaning through the eaves. Then he sighed, his thumb tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "It's an old term. From the lore my family keeps, means a destined partner, someone who completes you, body and soul. They use it to taunt, to imply you're a vulnerability. But am I?" She pressed gently, her heart aching at the pain in his voice. "To you?" He turned to her fully, his hands framing her face with a tenderness that belied his strength. "You're everything. From that first moment in the rain, I felt it. A pull, like gravity. Like I've been waiting for you without knowing it. The confession washed over her, warm and intoxicating. Elara's breath hitched, her hands covering his as she searched his eyes. In them, she saw reflections of her own loneliness, the scars of loss that had shaped them both. I feel it too, she whispered. Like fate didn't just save me from Lucas. It led me to you. To heal. Thorne's lips curved in a soft smile, but shadows lingered in his expression. He leaned in, capturing her mouth in a kiss that started slow, exploratory, but deepened with the urgency of unspoken truths. His hand slid to her waist, pulling her onto his lap, and she straddled him, feeling the hard planes of his body against hers. The kiss tasted of desperation and devotion, his fingers tangling in her hair as if anchoring himself to her sanity. Heat built between them, a slow simmer that promised eruption, but he held back, his body trembling with restraint. Why stop? Elara murmured against his lips, her forehead resting on his. Let go, Thorne. Trust me with all of you. He groaned, a sound laced with frustration and longing. I want to. God, I do. But there's parts of me, dark parts. If you saw them, you might run. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I've run from pain before, not from you. Whatever shadows you carry, we'll face them together. Like last night, your fever, the pain. I stayed. I'll always stay. His eyes softened, emotion raw and exposed. You're braver than you know, Elara. My light in the dark. They held each other then, the world narrowing to the rhythm of their breaths sinking, hearts beating in tandem. Thorne shared more in that quiet interlude, whispers of his childhood under the moon, rituals his parents taught him about balance and control. The land demands sacrifice, he said softly. Bloodlines tied to ancient pacts. It's why I can't leave. Why the rivals circle. Elara listened, her head on his chest, feeling the unnatural strength in his heartbeat. Bloodlines. Pacts. The pieces teased at her mind, connecting to the journal's runes, the fast-healing scars, the growls that seemed to emanate from him. What if he was more than human? The thought flickered. Absurd, yet insistent, heightening the suspense that coiled in her gut. But love, or whatever this blooming emotion was, overrode fear, deepening their bond in shared vulnerability. As night fully claimed the sky, the howls intensified, a chorus that sounded almost coordinated encircling the cabin. Thorne stiffened, his arms tightening around her. They're here, he muttered, his voice dropping to a growl. Elara's pulse spiked. Ronan? And his followers. He eased her off his lap, standing with a fluid grace that bordered on predatory. Stay inside. Bar the door behind me. No, she protested, grabbing his arm. His muscles felt like steel cables under her fingers, vibrating with pent-up energy. We face it together, remember? Thorne hesitated, conflict warring on his face. The moon's light streamed in, illuminating the golden sheen in his eyes, making them almost luminescent. It's too dangerous. They want you to break me. Then don't go alone. She stood firm, her hand sliding into his. The connection sparked, a tangible force that seemed to steady him. He nodded reluctantly, leading her to the door. Outside, the wind whipped fiercely, carrying scents of wet earth and something feral. Shadows moved in the tree line, large forms, eyes reflecting the moonlight like coins. Wolves, but bigger than any she'd seen, their postures aggressive, hackles raised. Thorne stepped forward, positioning himself between her and the pack. Ronan, he bellowed, his voice echoing with authority. Show yourself. A figure emerged from the shadows. A man, tall and lean, with wild hair and eyes that gleamed yellow. Ronan, flanked by two wolves that snarled, their teeth bared. Alpha, Ronan sneered, the title dripping with mockery. Your mate's scent calls to us. Hand her over and the territory is yours in peace. Alpha? Elara's blood ran cold. Thorne's body tensed, a low rumble building in his chest, inhuman, vibrating through her hand. She's mine, he snarled, the sound more beast than man. Touch her, and I'll end your line. The threat hung in the air, charged with violence. Ronan laughed, a chilling bark. The moon rises full. Your control slips, brother. Shift, and show her the monster Shift. The word slammed into Elara like a blow. Thorne's hand squeezed hers painfully tight, his skin heating, bones seeming to shift under her grip. No, it couldn't be, but the suspense crested, hints coalescing into terrifying possibility. "Get inside," Thorne whispered urgently, his voice strained. Now! But before she could move, Ronan lunged, his form blurring in the moonlight. Chaos erupted, snarls, clashes, and Thorne met him halfway. His movements blindingly fast, a roar tearing from his throat that shook the night. Elara backed toward the door, heart thundering, the bond pulling her to him even as fear screamed to flee. What was he? The secret teetered on the brink, the full moon demanding revelation amid the fray. In the melee, Thorne fought with savage grace. Claws. Claws? Flashing briefly in the light, the pack closed in, forcing his hand toward the truth that could bind or break them forever. Chapter 10. Shattered illusions. Chaos exploded under the full moon's merciless gaze, the night air thick with snarls and the metallic tang of impending violence. Elara's back pressed against the cabin door, her hand still tingling from where Thorne had released it. His words, "She's mine," echoed in her mind, possessive and raw, sending a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the chill wind. Ronan lunged first, his form a blur of motion, but Thorne met him midair with a ferocity that stole her breath. They collided like thunder, bodies twisting in a tangle of limbs and fury. "Thorne!" Elara cried, her voice lost in the din. The wolves, those massive, unnatural beasts, flanked Ronan, their eyes locked on her with hungry intelligence. One snapped its jaws, saliva dripping from fangs that gleamed like knives, while the other circled, low growls vibrating through the ground. Thorne shoved Ronan back, his strength superhuman, sending the man sprawling into the dirt. But as he turned to face the advancing wolves, something shifted in him. Subtle at first, a ripple across his shoulders, muscles bulging unnaturally under his shirt. His hands flexed, fingers elongating slightly, nails darkening to points that looked suspiciously like claws. Elara blinked, her mind rejecting the sight. It had to be the moonlight, the shadows playing tricks. But the growl that tore from Thorne's throat was undeniable, deep, animalistic, resonating from his core. "Back off." He roared, his voice distorted, echoing with a timbre that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. The wolves hesitated, ears flattening, as if recognizing an authority they couldn't defy. Ronan scrambled to his feet, wiping blood from his lip, his yellow eyes narrowing. "See, mate?" Ronan taunted, circling Thorne with predatory grace. The beast emerges. How long can you hide it from her? The moon demands truth. Thorne's head whipped toward Elara, his eyes flashing pure gold, pupils slitted like a predator's. "Elara, get inside." "Lock the door!" She fumbled for the handle, terror and confusion warring within her. But the bond, the inexplicable pull that had drawn her to him from the start, rooted her in place. "No, I won't leave you." One of the wolves lunged at her, its massive form barreling forward. Time slowed as Elara raised her arms instinctively, bracing for impact. But Thorne was there in an instant, faster than any man should be, intercepting the beast with a brutal tackle. They rolled across the ground, Thorne's hands, no paws, digging into fur, eliciting a yelp from the creature. Fur sprouted along his arms in patches, dark and coarse, before receding as if he willed it back. Elara's heart pounded, her mind reeling. This couldn't be real. Werewolves were myths, stories from Thorne's family journal. Yet here, under the moon's pull, the evidence clawed at her senses. Ronan's laughter cut through the fray, mocking. "Fight it, Alpha!" But she sees now, the monster beneath the man. Thorne pinned the wolf, his face contorted in pain and rage, teeth bared in a snarl that revealed elongated canines. He glanced at her, desperation in his golden gaze. "Please, don't watch." But she couldn't look away. The second wolf joined the attack, leaping onto Thorne's back. He threw it off with a surge of power, but not before its claws raked his side, tearing fabric and flesh. Blood welled, dark and viscous, but Thorne didn't falter. Instead, he fought with a savage elegance, his movements a blend of human strategy and animal instinct. Ronan charged again, and the two men grappled, fists flying, though Ronan's hands morphed too, claws slashing. Elara's breath came in gasps. The pieces clicked. The howls, the scars, the fever under the moon. Thorne wasn't just guarding land. He was part of it, tied to some ancient curse or bloodline. Her rational mind screamed to run, to escape this nightmare, but her heart, traitorous, aching, pulled her toward him. He'd saved her, sheltered her, shared his soul. Whatever he was hers. Seizing a fallen branch, Elara swung it at the nearest wolf as it regrouped. The wood connected with a thud, startling the beast enough to back off. "Leave him alone," she shouted, voice fierce despite the tremor. Thorne's head snapped up, surprise flashing across his features. In that distraction, Ronan landed a blow, knocking him to the ground. "Pathetic," Ronan sneered. "Your mate fights for you." How the mighty fall! Thorne rose with a roar that shook the trees, his form bulging, shirt ripping at the seams. Fur rippled across his back, bones cracking audibly in a way that made Elara's stomach churn. He was changing, shifting, but he fought it, muscles straining as he clamped down on the transformation. With a burst of speed, he slammed Ronan against a tree, the impact cracking bark. The wolves whined, retreating into the shadows, their alpha subdued. "Yield," Thorne growled, his voice barely human, hand, claw, pressed to Ronan's throat. Ronan gasped, eyes wide. "This isn't over. The pack will come for her, for you." Thorne's grip tightened, but he released him with a shove. "Go and tell them the bond is sealed. Challenge it, and die." Ronan staggered back, whistling sharply. The wolves slunk to his side, and they melted into the forest, leaving only echoes of defeat. Thorne stood there, panting, his body slowly reverting, fur receding, eyes fading to green. Blood streamed from his wounds, but they were already knitting, flesh mending before her eyes. He turned to Elara, expression a mix of fear and longing. "Elara." She dropped the branch, stepping forward on shaky legs. What are you?" He winced, looking away. "Not now, please. Let me explain inside." The bond tugged at her, urging trust, but suspense gripped her heart. What she'd seen defied reality. She nodded, helping him inside, his weight leaning on her. The cabin's warmth enveloped them as she guided him to the couch, fetching bandages despite knowing they might be unnecessary. Thorne collapsed, head in his hands. "I didn't want you to see that. Not like this." Elara knelt before him, tilting his chin up. His eyes held shadows, but also love, raw, vulnerable. "See what?" "Thorne, your hands. The fur. The way you moved. It's impossible." He took her hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses or claws that had vanished. "My family, we're cursed, or blessed, depending on the tale. Shifters. Werewolves. The moon pulls at us, demands the change. I've fought it for years, controlled it. But with you, the mate bond amplifies everything." "Mate bond?" she echoed, heart racing. The term from Ronan's taunts, from the journal. "You mean, I'm your destined?" He nodded, eyes searching hers. "From the moment I scented you at the wedding. Fate's pull. I tried to resist, to protect you from this world, but I couldn't stay away." Elara's mind whirled, disbelief clashing with the evidence, the connection she'd felt all along. It explained the heat, the protectiveness, the howls that called to her soul. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Fear," he admitted, voice breaking. "Of losing you. Like I lost everything else." The confession shattered her reservations. She pulled him into an embrace, feeling his tremors subside under her touch. "You won't lose me, but I need time to understand." They held each other through the night, the moon waning outside. Thorne shared more. Pack dynamics, the rival clans' greed for territory, how the bond healed old wounds. Elara listened, her hand on his heart, feeling its wild rhythm tame. The kiss they shared was tentative, then passionate, sealing promises in silence. The bond deepened, forged in revelation's fire, but questions lingered. What would the change mean for her? Could she embrace his world? As dawn broke, a distant howl signaled unrest. Thorne tensed. "They're not done. Ronan will rally," Elara squeezed his hand. "Then we'll face them. Together." But deep down, suspense brewed. the full truth of the bond, the pull of the moon on her own soul, hinting at changes yet to come.